Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Stephanie Domerat. Tonight we are talking money, from unclaimed property sitting in state coffers to smart financial moves every Oregonian should consider. Joining us today is Oregon State Treasurer Elizabeth Steiner. Ms. Steiner is Oregon's 30th treasurer. She is the first woman and first physician to hold this office. Treasurer Steiner served in the state Senate for 13 years prior to being elected treasurer. Treasurer Steiner, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Really appreciate the invitation, Stephanie.
Great to have you. Okay, of course, you've been in office now in this role for about a year. How do you feel like that's gone so far?
I think it's gone really well. First and foremost, we have an extraordinary team at Treasury. Both the folks that I was able to bring in directly and the career staff there are all so dedicated to serving Oregonians and work so hard on their behalf in all the different things we do. So we've had some great accomplishments in our first year, and we're really excited about what comes next.
So earlier this week, February 1st, was National Unclaimed Property Day. So last year, your office actually returned nearly $60 million in unclaimed property to Oregonians. How does so much property end up unclaimed? How does this work?
You'd be astonished how easy it is to lose track of a bank account that doesn't have a lot of money in it, or perhaps you didn't cash a refund check from a business, or you might be the beneficiary of a life insurance policy from someone that you didn't know you were the beneficiary of, and that person passed away, and that money is your unclaimed property. So when a business or a bank or whomever, an insurance company, holds property that belongs to someone and that money doesn't get claimed within 3 years and there's no contact, they have an obligation to try to reach out, but if they can't, then they're obligated to turn it over to Treasury. We hold that money in trust for the person, the beneficiary, or their heirs forever, in perpetuity. So when that happens, we urge people to get their money back. We want to give you your money back. And you can go to unclaimed.oregon.gov, really simple, and search for your name, or your family members' names, or your coworkers' names, and find out if you, in fact, have money waiting for you at Treasury.
Sounds really easy, and there's no deadline for this.
There's no deadline. It is held for you forever. Oh. And if, God forbid, you pass away before you claim it, it's there for your heirs.
So what is the most common type of unclaimed property, typically?
It's usually bank accounts. People start a small bank account somewhere and then they move to a different part of the state and they change banks, but they don't clean out that bank account. Refund checks are a very common form of it. Uncashed paychecks are surprisingly common. You would think people would cash their paychecks, but it doesn't always happen.
So it's really interesting. And again, just for viewers, how do they do that?
It's really simple. You go to unclaimed.oregon.gov and search for your name.
Nice. Okay. Well, your office, of course, also is responsible for managing the state's pension, and recently released a report on the net zero climate investment strategy. So this is really interesting. I'd like for you to explain what the goal of this is. I know it started a few years ago. Why is this important to your office?
Well, let me be clear. The most important thing to our office is growing the pension fund and all the other trust funds that our office invests, which is about 20 to 25 different funds of all sorts. The pension fund's the biggest. Right now we have about $100 billion with a B in that fund. And we will always focus on what's best for beneficiaries, what helps grow the pension fund the best. Now, what we know is that the market overall, both the stock market and private assets and real assets, all sorts of things, is moving toward a clean energy future and moving away from carbon-intensive businesses and carbon-intensive fuel, things like that. So, as part of the push to make sure that we meet our fiduciary responsibility, our responsibility as trustees of this fund, we work very hard to pay attention to the market. In this case, that means looking at the carbon intensity of our portfolio. And so we measure that and we compare that to how we're doing as a fund. The good news in this report is that between the beginning of 2022 and the end of 23, which is the first period we measured, the emissions intensity of our portfolio dropped by 50%. That's a lot. We can't take credit for all of it. The market takes a lot of credit for that, and the fact that company revenues were going up. In that same period of time, though, and in fact beyond, we doubled our what we call our climate positive investment, things like wind farms or solar installations, battery storage, in the part of our portfolio that's the most carbon intensive, the real assets. And those clean energy, those clean investments dramatically outperformed. They got about 20% on a 5-year average compared to 12% for the carbon intensive ones.
For people who don't have a pension, aren't part of that 100 billion, the state workforce that gets that, why is this important to everyday Oregonians?
That's a great question. So the better our pension fund does, the lower the amount that current public employers, school districts, cities, counties, fire districts, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, a lot of your viewers are part of that, the lower the amount they have to pay in to make up what we can't provide in terms of paying current benefits. So the better our pension fund does, the more the pension fund can provide toward benefits and the less public employers. Every dollar that they don't have to put into the pension fund is a dollar they can spend on direct services. More firefighters, keeping stations open, more teachers in classrooms. So every Oregonian is affected by how well we do at investing your pension fund.
It's really interesting. So that is good news with the progress report, definitely. So as treasurer, also you have a pulse on the state's finances. And if you could give Oregonians just one financial move to make this year, what would that be?
Save money. It's really simple. Allegedly, Albert Einstein said compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe. And what that means is it's smarter to start saving money right now, today, even a tiny amount, and keep doing it over a long period of time, because that'll make it grow so much. You can go online and figure out, if I put in $1 a day starting today, how much am I going to have compared to if 5 years from now I start inputting $365 a year, right? It's so much better to do it early. So whether it's saving for your child with a 529 or Embark account, or saving for yourself through whatever your pension fund your employer offers, or if you're part of Oregon Saves, our statewide IRA, or if you have a family member or you yourself have a disability through an ABLE account, those are all ways we can help you save. And there are lots of other ways you can do it through our credit unions and banks.
You brought up the ABLE fund. There are some changes with that this year.
So exciting.
Can you remind viewers what that is and who could benefit from that?
Sure. So ABLE accounts are really important tool for people with disabilities. They're designed to allow people with disabilities to save for their future expenses, whether those are healthcare expenses or independent living expenses, any of those kinds of things, without that money being counted against your eligibility for public benefits. For example, if you have a child with a developmental disability, they may in the long term need supportive care to help them be as functional as possible. That's often a public benefit. And if your child has $50,000 in a savings account, that counts against their eligibility once they're 18. In an ABLE account, that doesn't count. It's invisible when we measure assets. Up until December 31st of 2025, the age limit for when you had to have been diagnosed with your disability was 26. Now it's up to age 46. That's so important because we know that our veterans come home after serving our country, sometimes with really serious illnesses or injuries or PTSD. We know that adults get into accidents and suffer traumatic brain injuries or are diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So being able to start an ABLE account now as a young adult or an early middle-aged adult really helps them plan for their future and make sure that they can stay financially secure.
I'd like to talk about something that was really big last year and still is on the national stage. Tariffs were a big headline. We had Oregon's chief economist on Straight Talk just last month, and he said that the impact of tariffs from last year on Oregon and across the country wasn't as bad as a lot of economists predicted. What did you see in Oregon, and what are you watching going forward around that?
So I think it's important to pay attention to Mr. Riccadonna's words, which is wasn't as bad. What's interesting is, you're right, and he's right, of course. He's an excellent economist. We're fortunate to have him on our team. But what we have seen is not so much that we lost jobs, which we were concerned that we would, but rather that job growth has slowed. And this is true in Oregon, and it's true nationally. In fact, the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City came out with a really big study in this past week showing that the nation as a whole had significant slowing of job growth directly as a result of tariffs. So there's a difference between losing jobs and not growing as many jobs. For Oregon's economy to continue to grow and for people to feel secure about spending money and contributing to the economy and making sure they can pay their rent, they have to be confident that their wages are going to grow and that there will be new jobs available. We are less confident about that, although fortunately the impact hasn't been as bad as we feared.
Thank you. We are out of time. It was so great to have you in, Treasurer. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Still ahead on Straight Talk, a bill aimed at saving Oregon's imperiled species. Why advocates say a small tax on hotel stays could generate tens of millions of dollars to support them. Stay with us.